Chair Sutton and members of the commission, we are now live.
Good evening and welcome to the June 23rd, 2022 meeting of the Montgomery County Historic Preservation Commission. My name is Bob Sutton and I am the chair, and I'd like to begin by asking my fellow commission members to introduce themselves, starting on my left.
Zara Nasser.
Jeffrey Haynes.
Karen Burdett.
Cristina Rado.
James Doman.
Julie Pelletier.
Michael Kine, Historic Preservation Staff.
Excuse me, I'd like to correct it. It is the June 22nd meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission. The first item on our agenda tonight.
One moment, I'm so sorry. Rebecca Ballo, Historic Preservation Staff.
Dan Bruckert, Historic Preservation Staff.
Casey Roan, Historic Preservation Staff.
Sorry. The first item on our agenda tonight is a work session and public hearing on the locational atlas designation for the Joseph Piles House located at 4608 North Park Avenue in Chevy Chase, Maryland. And the way this will function is we will have a staff report, and then we will have opportunity for owners or owners' representatives to do a presentation. You will have 10 minutes to do this, and then we will open it up for questions to you from commissioners. And then the local advisory group from Friendship Heights will be able to do a presentation as well. You will have 7 minutes. We will keep track of time, and there will be questions for you as well. Following that, we will do a deliberation among commission members, and then we will have a vote. So that is how this will function. So please, if you could start with the staff presentation, that would be terrific. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Casey Roan, Cultural Resources Planner 2, and I'll be giving the staff report for this item. In this presentation, I'll provide a brief review of the applicable historic preservation policies, a site and architectural description, historic context, our evaluation of the site's integrity, provide a couple of comparative examples, and then end with the designation criteria and the staff recommendation. On February 2nd, 2022, Julian Mansfield, village manager, submitted a request on behalf of the Village of Friendship Heights for evaluation of 4608 North Park Avenue for listing to the Locational Atlas and Index of Historic Sites. Locational Atlas requests follow a set process shown here, following receipt of request in our office with a completed MIHP form. Our office goes through a period of research and analysis of the site and brings forward a recommendation to the Historic Preservation Commission. The HPC holds a public hearing and work session and makes a recommendation to the planning board as to whether the site should be listed in the locational atlas, after which the planning board holds a public hearing and work session to make the final determination. These designation requests are determined on the basis of the designation criteria outlined in Section 24A3 of the Montgomery County Code, which provides two sets of criteria addressing historical and cultural significance and architectural and design significance. These criteria will guide your decision tonight. We'll now move on to look at the subject property, starting with the site. 4608 North Park Avenue sits within the Village of Friendship Heights, approximately a third of a mile from Montgomery County's border with the District of Columbia. The building remains in its original location and retains most of its original quarter-acre parcel footprint. The surrounding neighborhood retains only a few of the early 20th century homes which were once predominant here. The nearby area was extensively redeveloped by the 1970s with high-rise condominium, apartment, and commercial buildings. I'll now provide a brief architectural description. A more detailed description by elevation is available in Appendix 2 of the designation form. The Piles House is a two-bay frame dwelling constructed in 1906. It features 2/2 double-hung wood sash windows and a single-leaf wood front door with a large light. The full-width front porch, likely original in form but altered in style, has chamfered posts, pendant drops, and simple decorative brackets. The original rectangular plan footprint has been expanded with a 2-story rear L, which is seen here from the west. And it sits on a foundation comprised of both concrete block and uncoursed stone. It's clad in dropped wooden siding and capped with an asphalt shingled hipped roof. The home's wide overhanging eaves, slightly elongated first-story windows, and the large light of the front door suggested to us that the original design was influenced by the Italianate style, but has since been altered. At the rear, an exterior stair provides direct access to the second story. On the east elevation, a narrow 1-story side porch was added to the rear of the original dwelling. This is the best angle from which to discern the additions made to the original structure, and we'll discuss those in more detail shortly. After a brief historic context of the development of Friendship Heights and the ownership of this property. The area remained largely rural through the late 19th century, but became a target for suburban development following the invention of the electric streetcar in 1888. 2 lines, the Tenleytown and Rockville Railroad and the Glen Echo Railroad, opened with service to this area, making it a very attractive location for new subdivisions. Henry W. Offutt platted the 16-acre subdivision of Friendship Heights in 1902. The gold star indicates the future location of the Piles house at the northwest corner of Block 9 and will be used to indicate the location of the property throughout the presentation. Friendship Heights grew over the next dozen years into an established residential community where the affordable land allowed for large yards with room for kitchen gardens and domestic chickens. Enterprising citizens organized community institutions and established a special taxation district to support public works projects and the provision of public services. By 1931, much of Offutt's original subdivision had been developed with single-family homes, many of which sit on 2 or more lots. And the character of Friendship Heights was largely established by this point, but change would come fairly quickly. The opening of a Woodward and Lothrop department store here in 1950 was the beginning of a transformational wave of development. In this aerial view from 1951, you can see this development beginning along Wisconsin Avenue, but it hasn't yet touched the area immediately adjacent to the Piles house, again indicated by the gold star. Changes in zoning, the advent of Metro Rail, and the work of local real estate developers led to a rapid replacement of the single-family homes. And by 1979, the area was wholly transformed, and the neighborhood character that you see today was largely established. The Piles family owned the property here throughout much of this history. On January 11, 1906, Joseph F. Piles purchased a 1/4-acre lot within Block 9 of Offutt's subdivision. Piles was a D.C. native who worked as a carpenter for most of his life, and he built this home in 1906, and shortly thereafter married Bertha A. Fahrenwald, who was a daughter of German and Prussian immigrants, and they moved into the home. One goal with our research here was to look closely at the social history and to try to understand the Piles family's relationship to the community, but our research really only uncovered sort of basic demographic and occupational information. Neither Joseph nor Bertha appear to have played a very active role in Friendship Heights' civic and social life over the decades of their ownership of this property. We do know that the family made a series of modifications to the home, though these changes were difficult to date. In 1913, Joseph began a series of attempts to sell the house and provided a description via the real estate listing that remained consistent through 1931. He describes this as a 6-room house on a 1/4 acre with a hen house, fruit trees, and well water. And later, they would build a detached garage by 1926. The 1927 to 1963 Sanborn map seen at the right here provides the best information about the alterations made to the dwelling. You can actually see 2 different versions of the home visible on this map through the layers in the paper. The older version, which has been covered over as the map was amended, you can see a 2-story dwelling with a full-width front porch and a semi-detached structure at the southwest corner. And then later, on the topmost layer, the home appears as a 2-story structure with a full-width front porch and a full-width 1-story rear addition. At some future date, this was again altered to the current configuration, with the narrow 2-story rear L and 1-story side porch. Based on the consistency of the materials used throughout, we do believe that these modifications were likely made by Joseph Piles prior to his death in 1958. But the aerial photos, real estate atlases, tax assessment records here did not clearly point to specific dates for these alterations. In addition to these changes in form, there are details indicating that the original design of the home has been altered and obscured. We believe the porch detailing here to be proportionally too light and most likely an alteration, though the kick-out on the corner board seen at left here indicates that this front porch did have some sort of elongated bracket in its past form. And at the right, you can see that the frieze is also an alteration which has covered up the tops of the window surrounds. Between the wide overhanging roof and the wide frieze, this suggested that there may have been detailing there that was removed with the replacement of the original frieze, leading to our determination that the original design was likely influenced by the Italianate style, though this is no longer very apparent here. We also looked at the integrity of the property as defined by the National Park Service. Even though we don't follow the Park Service process, we do include an evaluation of integrity as one of the steps we go through to make determinations about our own criteria. We found that the property lacks integrity of location and setting. Though it is in its original setting, the parcel was effectively reduced by street dedication at the frontage, which removed the setback from the road. And both the lot and the surrounding environment have been completely transformed. The property does retain integrity of materials and workmanship, reflecting Joseph Piles' construction and likely modification of the home. But the integrity of design has been negatively impacted by the alterations to the porch and frieze, which eliminated what original style this building once had. This property also lacks integrity of feeling and association. The buildings, structures, and street patterns associated with the streetcar era have been eliminated. And this building on its own does not convey the feeling of suburban life in early 20th century Montgomery County or any association with the streetcar lines which spurred the development here. We recognize that this is an old home and there are few of these left in the village, but it is our opinion that that does not impart historical or architectural significance. And I want to point to 2 comparative examples to think about as you look at this property. The first is the Somerset Historic District. This captures the streetcar suburb immediately adjacent to Friendship Heights. This was listed to the Master Plan for Historic Preservation under criteria 1A and 1B. This district clearly conveys the county's suburban streetcar history where the Piles House property does not. Somerset Heights was noted for its middle-class residents, unassuming homes, and today it retains the characteristics which evoke its period of significance. The spacing and rhythm of buildings and open space, the uniform scale of the houses, the relationship of the houses to the street with the wide setback, and the large lots. Somerset is still legible as the streetcar suburb that it began as. The second example I'd like to point to is the community paint and hardware store / Wilson's store and post office in downtown Bethesda. This is an example of a site that was individually listed to the master plan under criteria 1A, 1D, and 2A. And this is a good example of a site that was designated for being the last of its kind. And you'll see the situation here has some key differences from the Piles House. So similar to the Piles House, it's identified as the last vestige of Bethesda's 19th century commercial architecture. And this building sits surrounded by modern development in the heart of Bethesda's commercial district. But here's where the examples begin to diverge. This building, as the general store and post office, was an important community institution that was significant to the community historically and important to its development over time. It's also architecturally distinguished as epitomizing the form of the turn-of-the-century village store. and it's believed to be the first commercial structure built in the central business district. All of this lends this resource distinction beyond being simply the last surviving feature of its period of construction. So those are two similar examples to think about as you consider the Piles House property. As a reminder, the decision to list a property in the locational atlas requires a finding that the site meets one or more of the county's designation criteria. It is the staff's recommendation that 4608 North Park Avenue does not meet criteria for historical and cultural or architectural and design significance, and therefore that the Historic Preservation Commission should not recommend to the Planning Board that they list the property in the Locational Atlas and Index of Historic Sites. This concludes the staff presentation, and I am available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rome. Are there any questions from commissioners?
This is Commissioner Nasser. Casey, do we have a report of the condition of the house? Is it stable? Is it in good condition? Everything is?
Yes, it appears to be in good condition.
Commissioner Burdett?
Yes, Commissioner this is Commissioner Burdett. Casey, can you tell us how big the lot is that is remaining?
I'm pushing the wrong button. Yes. So there are two parcels that are connected here, and together they form, the lot is still a quarter acre in size, so 10,890 square feet. Approximately 2,300 square feet at the front were dedicated to the village of Friendship Heights in 1968 for the street widening. And while that is still part of this overall property, it is effectively been paved over at this point. So the property is still held in private ownership as the original quarter acre, but approximately 2,300 square feet of that has been given over to the road right of way.
And I'm assuming that its current zoning status is for commercial use?
That's correct.
So what kind of, if the house were demolished, what amount of the lot coverage would be allowed?
So what I can do, I don't have the lot coverage. You want to, Rebecca?
I'm wondering, this is Rebecca Ballo for the record. I'm wondering if you could, I don't think that our staff can answer that
Okay.
about what is the development potential for the site, either by right or if there is even an optional method of development that might be considered for this lot on its own.
Understood, thank you. Yeah, I'm good, I'm done.
This is Commissioner Pelletier.
Commissioner Pelletier.
Thank you. What is it used for now?
So the home, or the home as it was originally built, was obviously residential in nature, but is now being used as an apartment as well as commercial. So it's divided into separate spaces, so both residential and commercial.
And what is going on with the lot itself, just from this photo and from looking at it kind of online? Is a lot of it paved? I can't figure out if there's a lot of hardscape on the lot currently.
Yes, quite a
There
bit
is.
of it is paved.
Okay.
So of that triangle, maybe the point at the rear remains a grassy lawn, but quite a bit of it has been paved. This is showing the corner that you see there is basically the property line, and then that's the driveway for the adjoining property. And then on the other side, the sort of west face of the building, there's a small parking lot for this structure that wraps around to the back. And so it is paved on all four sides.
Okay. So it's largely lost its context, the house, like its original context.
That was my assessment, particularly given that, we know this property had the fruit trees and the hen house and the well and the detached garage, and all of that is now gone.
Okay, thanks.
This is Commissioner Haynes.
Commissioner Haynes.
Thank you. There are a number of other residential buildings to the back and to the, I guess that's the east side. Are those of similar vintage, or are those newer?
Those are slightly newer. This is the oldest of that set. The nearby buildings range in date from 1928 to 1951.
Thank you.
I'm going to step in here. This is Chair Sutton. I believe, using your criteria, the Wilson store has been moved to a location that is completely out of context to its original location. So in a way, doesn't that make a case for this building to be designated?
Well, it has been twice relocated, but I think it still remains in that, developed context of downtown Bethesda.
It currently
I'm
is
not
in a
sure.
residential area.
This is Rebecca Ballo for the record. There were multiple designation criteria that were used for the Bethesda store. Casey, can we go back to that slide really quickly? So we had 1A, 1D, and 2A for that, which I need to go into my ordinance.
And it is no longer in this location that's shown in the picture. here.
Right, and it is no longer.
That is correct, but it has been moved just about a block south of the theater.
So we would contend that even though it has been moved, that it still does have character or interest in value as part of the history, the commercial history of downtown Bethesda. We would also say that even though it has been moved off of its site, that the store still embodies the distinctive characteristics of its type and of that period. Is the oldest commercial building still within downtown Bethesda, and we think that the singular importance of it as a commercial structure and as a community gathering space still holds, even though it is not on its original location.
Thank you. Commissioner Burdett?
The Piles house, you quoted earlier that as Friendship Heights was developed, a large number of the lots were larger, lots like in the Somerset district, with larger homes that were bucolic and still remain in their, lots, and are now quite expensive. And the Pile house was a smaller house and was in a neighborhood of smaller lots, and it's one of the only ones remaining of its era. Wouldn't that be representative of Mr. Pyle was a carpenter, so I'm not sure working class is quite the right phrase for his house, but a craftsman house and representative of that status, and it's not on a big lot and is not a big expensive house, but it is representative of a class of person who was actually instrumental in building a great portion of the suburbs at the time.
So Somerset, the designation for Somerset Heights specifically noted that the residents there were of a more middle-class nature than was found in the nearby streetcar suburbs, particularly as compared to Chevy Chase. So that was part of the way it was listed to the master plan, was as reflecting that sort of middle class of Montgomery County life. And if you look at the district there, not all of the homes are that grand in nature. There are some streets there that reflect the smaller lot sizes, more similar to what we see with the Piles house.
But again, the Piles house would reflect more of a working class craftsman house. And I don't mean craftsman stylistically, I mean as the owner occupant's capabilities. Would it not be reflective of a particular tier, economic tier of the era?
This is Rebecca Ballo for the record, and I would certainly invite Casey to add to this comment. I think, yes, you are correct, and the question is whether or not that is significant, whether or not that embodies any significance in terms of the history and the development of Friendship Heights, or this type of architecture that you are looking to develop. When we look at individual sites as well, whether they're for the locational atlas, which is ultimately the step before the master plan, we really look at, is this exemplifying this significant history for Montgomery County, or this significant history for this place? So Yes, you are correct. However, it is the staff's contention that that is not significant and therefore does not meet the criteria.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Thank you. If not, I will invite the applicant and applicant's representatives to come up to the table here. And if you could introduce yourselves, that would be terrific. The names I have here are Andy Adams, Dan and Julie Estrada, and Robert Harris. So if you could come up and if you could, when you speak, if you could introduce yourselves for the record, that would be good. The microphones that you have in front of you, there's a little button that you can push, and when the light comes on, they will be live. So you'll have 10 minutes. At the end of that time, I hope you are willing to accept questions from us. So with that, please take over.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. I'm Bob Harris, representing the owner, not the applicant. You introduced us as the applicant. We're very much not the applicant, but we are, Mrs. Uhar here.
Sorry, that
Yeah.
for our purposes, you're the applicant. Your building is the applicant. I apologize for that.
Okay, not a problem. With me on my left is Julie Uhar, and her brother Dan Estrada is on the phone. They are the property owners. And to my right is Andy Adams, an historic preservation expert that they have retained. I'll let Julie speak and Andy, and if there's anything to add, I'll chime in at the end. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Like Bob said, my name is Julie Uhar. I'm speaking for my brother and I. Dan Estrada is my brother. We're the owners of the property. We are here to oppose the proposed designation. We agree with the assessment and the staff report, but also want to add some relevant information. By way of background, we inherited this property from our mother, who had viewed it as an investment with redevelopment potential similar to that of the rest of Friendship Heights. While she and we saw Friendship Heights develop around this property, we waited for an opportunity to do the same. Both the 1974 and the 1998 Friendship Heights sector plans called for its assemblage for development along with other adjoining properties. A few years ago, consistent with the recommendations in the sector plan, a developer approached us about assembling most of the underdeveloped properties on the east end of this block. Late last year, we heard that the Village of Friendship Heights intended to seek historic designation of our property, which would prevent the proposed development. After the designation application was filed with the HPC, the Village of Friendship Heights approached us about buying the property. We've since been working with the village and have agreed to general terms and conditions for the village to buy the property. The village has indicated at this time that they're working toward presenting a formal purchase and sale agreement. If Friendship Village buys the property, they will have the right to preserve it for as long as they wish, even without an historic designation. We do not, however, want the proposed designation to unfairly devalue the property, or for the designation process to be a factor in the sale of the property. We thank you for your understanding our opposition to the designation.
Good evening. I'm Andy Adams, architectural historian with A. Adams and Company. I'm here tonight on behalf of the owners of 4608 North Park Avenue to oppose the listing of that property in the Locational Atlas and Index of Historic Sites. Your staff has conducted a thorough study of the house, found that it does not meet the applicable criteria, and has recommended that it not be listed in the Locational Atlas. I concur with that recommendation. I've been working professionally in the field of historic preservation for a very long time. I've evaluated hundreds of buildings and areas for historic status and written many dozens of applications for designation of landmarks and historic districts. I was asked by the property owners to evaluate this house against the relevant criteria in Chapter 24A. After visiting the property, reviewing the application before you, and doing my own research, it is clear to me that the house meets none of the relevant criteria. I also considered, as did your staff, how the house's loss of context adversely affects its integrity. This loss of integrity further undermines the house's ability to qualify for any historic designation. Landmarks must be important. They must be significant to qualify for designation, especially given the regulatory consequences that come with such listing. Designation criteria repeatedly refer to significance. This house is not significant on its own, and it is not significant as a remnant of a lost streetcar suburb because it cannot convey the characteristics of that lost place. This house is a modest vernacular frame structure built in 1906. It likely took its current, next slide please, current massing sometime, thank you, between 1931 and 1958. It has lost its front yard and its historic relationship to the street when North Park Avenue was widened. And this is important, especially given the nature of the streetcar suburb. Its proportions are reminiscent of earlier Italianate houses. Its hipped roof does not suggest that it is transitioning toward a four-square. The defining square form and 4 rooms over 4 rooms was well established years before this. The house is not architecturally significant. It does not embody the distinctive characteristics of a type, period, or method of construction. No significant event occurred in this house, and it is not associated with an important individual. Also, as the staff noted, the house is, quote, not recognized as a familiar visual feature of Friendship Heights or the county, unquote. This house is also not significant in relation to the earlier streetcar suburb, because that streetcar suburb is no longer extant. Friendship Heights was subdivided in 1901. It developed similarly to Somerset Heights to the north, which was subdivided 11 years earlier. Next slide, please. Here, the lots were large enough to accommodate substantial houses and often large kitchen gardens and domestic livestock. The houses were set back far from the street. They ran the stylistic gamut from Queen Anne to colonial revival. Next slide. Stone piers at the entrances to Friendship Heights identified and announced the area's name. In Somerset, the physical characteristics remain essentially the same. In Friendship Heights, they are essentially gone. Somerset's original houses, streetscapes, next slide, stone piers, and overall character to continue to convey their history. In Friendship Heights, there is no longer significant historic fabric to do that. Beginning in 1964 with zoning that allowed buildings up to 140 feet, that original historic character has been systematically replaced by mid and high-rise late 20th century commercial and residential buildings. The residential neighborhood, once defined by single-family houses on large treed lots, has been transformed into a dense urban neighborhood. Next slide. Here you see the porch there on the right is the porch to the house in question, looking east on North Park. Next slide. Looking west at even bigger buildings. And next slide, please. Whoops.
Okay.
Let's see. One more? Well,
carry on.
all right. There's, there we go. Thank you. This is the back of the house at 4608, looking north across North Park to the buildings across the street. You can see the context has, its historic context is gone and bears no resemblance to its former suburban incarnation. That this house remains does not elevate it to landmark status. It is wholly insufficient to convey the character and significance of Friendship Heights as a streetcar suburb. That the house is now the oldest house still standing also does not qualify for landmark status. Age in and of itself does not qualify, does not impart significance. A building that is not important in the first instance does not suddenly gain importance if and when older buildings around it are demolished. A building must still possess some essential significance, which this house does not. Rather, it is a remnant of a lost neighborhood. It is this loss of context that has caused the house to lose its integrity of setting and feeling. the two aspects of integrity essential to understanding its connection between, to the streetcar suburb in which it was built. This connection has been lost to late 20th century Friendship Heights. Separately, I worry about the misuse of preservation. It is a handy tool, too easily misused for other purposes, usually to stop development. The designation of a property that does not meet the relevant criteria for landmark status is bad for preservation, a cause in public policy about which I care deeply. After careful consideration, it is my professional opinion that 4608 North Park Avenue fails to meet any criteria for listing in the locational atlas or in the master plan for historic preservation. I urge you to adopt the staff's findings and to recommend to the planning board that this house not be listed in the locational atlas or the master plan. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, may I take one moment? One of the commissioners, it may have been you, Commissioner Burdett, asked a question of staff about the zoning. Whoever it was, I think I might be able to answer that.
Yes, please.
The zoning had been CBD, Central Business District zoning. That was under the 1974 sector plan that envisioned redevelopment of this entire block. More recently, when the county rewrote the zoning ordinance in 2014, I think it was, they changed the zoning to CR, commercial residential, which is an optional method zone that allows high-rise residential or commercial development, more or less consistent with what you see in Friendship Heights. And again, the 1998 sector plan re-recommended assemblage of this property with others for development consistent with the other development in the area. And there is, I don't believe under the CR zone there's a specific lot coverage requirement because it's an urban zone, if you will, as is almost all of Friendship Heights and all of Bethesda.
Thank you.
That's all we have. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. We're happy to answer any questions either now or after the.
We'd be happy to. Does anybody have any questions for the owner or owner's representatives? Commissioner Doman.
Yes, this is Commissioner Doman. Thank you for your presentation. It was very thorough and very enlightening, and obviously you've looked into a lot of details regarding this property. As the owner, you had mentioned that this property you're currently in negotiations with the village for the village to buy this property. Is that correct? Yes. Is there now? I wasn't familiar with this area at all, and because I'm from Rockville, so I drove down to find this, and I was amazed at the high-rises. You know, it was overwhelming. And then this little house sits out there, kind of like a lost remnant of something out there in the middle of nowhere. And all around, there's very little parking, and as you had mentioned, the front is gone because of the widening of the road. There's hardscape around the back and to the sides, and there's parking in the front. It has very little residential appearance to it right now. It is an attractive house, though. I really like that it's been well maintained. I guess my other question would be, you had mentioned that there might be a grouping of the other houses. There's this one house, your house, and then there's two other ones right adjacent to it going, I guess, to the east or so. Are these also similar, and do they also would fall under possible acquisition by the village? Do you know?
A number of the properties were part of the assemblage acquisition that had been envisioned. Whether that or another one goes forward is uncertain at this point in time for other reasons than this.
Thank you.
Commissioner Burdett.
Wrong one, sorry. You'd mentioned that I believe your mother purchased the property as an investment, and you and your brother inherited the property as an investment. So I'm assuming that your family has held this investment now for some decades?
Yes, since 1975.
And in all that time, there was never an opportunity to redevelop this lot?
There were, and my mom's intent was to wait until it was assembled under the best circumstances, which involved everyone agreeing, and she that was her expectation, that it would be assembled and in the you know, the best way financially. So she did have her business there over the years, and she maintained the property because that's just how she was. She, you know, kept it nicely. And she, in her last year, she lived in the house and also had her business in the house.
And the house currently is being used as an apartment?
She passed away a couple years ago, and it was after she had agreed to this one particular contract. And since her passing, we've just been sort of waiting to find out what to do with the house, and you know, hopefully to sell it.
But you have tenants?
We do. We have someone in the top floor, just month to month, and then my daughter was staying in the bottom floor.
Okay.
For a little while during COVID.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? If not, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your coming, appreciate your answering our questions. Now we have representatives from the local community. The one name that I have is Alfred Muller, but I'm not sure that there might be others who are involved here as well. So if you could please introduce yourselves, state your names to the record, and use the microphones there, and you will have 7 minutes.
Thank you.
Is there someone that is remote as well?
No, Chair Sutton. Dan Estrada, who was one of the property owners, is still on the call, but he did not wish to speak.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With me is our village manager, Julian Mansfield. My prepared statement is within the Centennial Book, so you can, if you get bored listening to me, you can look at the pictures of what one of you termed the lost neighborhood. Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on behalf of the Friendship Heights Village Council, the 7 volunteers who were elected to represent the approximately 5,000 residents and numerous businesses who make up our unique community, and that I would emphasize that word, unique. The council is unanimous in our support for designating 4608 North Park Avenue as a historically important building. I have in bold print, it is a familiar and visual feature of Friendship Heights, with all due respect to the excellent staff report. The bus that serves our community and goes around every hour brings residents to the metro station, and from each of those buildings, they pass by this little house. Everybody in the community knows and recognizes this little house, basically because it stands out. Let me introduce myself. My name is Alfred Muller, a retired physician who has lived in the village of Friendship Heights for almost 50 years. I led the village council for 26 years, 1975 to 2001, as chairman and then its first mayor. I returned to the village council this year and presently serve as its secretary. I do not have your extensive expertise in historical architecture. I do share, though, I am certain, your passion for preserving important landmarks, not for nostalgia's sake, but as educational tools to teach future generations about the history of their communities. And this house in this community teaches Montgomery County, and for that matter, represents things that we see changing and don't realize it in our world. Here are some of the unique facts that were not covered in our application of the excellent and much appreciated staff analysis. Friendship Heights was one of a handful of special tax districts formed in the early 20th century, in our case 1914, in order to maintain basic services in the community, such as street maintenance and garbage collection. We are now one of only 2 remaining special tax districts. We are almost historical in that all the others have become municipalities. We are the fourth largest elected local government in Montgomery County. With all due respect, we are not an advisory group. We get elected every 2 years. We have a $2 to $3 million budget. We have a community center and programs and take care of the streets and lights and sidewalks. After Rockville, Gaithersburg, and Tacoma Park, we are the largest subdivision government in the county, with responsibilities now similar to those large municipalities. Friendship Heights also was part of the first Montgomery County sector plan. It was the first central business district, and it shows how innovation in a small community built by people like Joseph Piles could progress. By the start of the 20th century, the area was comprised primarily of farmlands belonging to the Shoemaker and Eld families. But in the early 1900s, homes started to be built, including the one personally built, that was indicated by the vice chair, by a simple carpenter. I like that phrase, a simple carpenter representing a bygone age, not a famous, brilliant person of note in the newspapers. At that time, the street was named High Street because it was up on a hill. Eventually, there were about 125 residences, ranging from large Victorian edifices to more humble domiciles. Simply take a look at the book and you'll see the variety. And starting in the late 1960s, as was said, assemblage of these properties resulted in the high-rise community of rental, condominium, and office buildings you see presently. Woodrow Wilson once said, quote, "The history of a nation is the history of its villages, writ large," end of quote. And that is what 4608 North Park illustrates in graphic manner. It is history just in that small building, the oldest true remnant of single-family homes in our village before its evolution to high-rise buildings immediately adjacent and surrounding it, unlike Somerset, unlike any other community around us. It is therefore not only the oldest residential structure in our village, it is a unique before and after. It's a snapshot of Montgomery County history and that of the country itself. Rather than correctly describe 4608 North Park Avenue as no longer surrounded by its original environment and therefore conclude it's not worthy of historic designation, I would respectfully suggest that you instead consider its historic relevance, its unique historic relevance, as showing how far the village, Montgomery County, and the United States have come from rural farmland. When the house was built, it was surrounded by orchards and a stream and dirt roads. It went from a small community of single-family homes to a high-rise village with flourishing commercial and, I might say, diverse multicultural residential constituencies, unlike any community surrounding us. And therefore, I think this is a worthy candidate to be designated an historic and symbolically significant property. That is why the village has been in serious negotiations with the family. I knew the owner, the previous owner, who is now deceased, Joan Estrada. She lovingly restored this house. And it is testimony to her that we wish to put a plaque honoring both her and Joseph Piles, a simple carpenter who built something that represents the good people that came here 150 years ago and not the people that built the high-rises, which you can see for anyone that's interested as they pass by in our shuttle bus or come to visit. I'm ready to answer any questions, and the manager also can fill in any details that I might forget.
Any questions for Mr. Muller?
I have one.
Commissioner
Pelletier.
Pelletier, thank you.
Remember me?
I do.
Mr. Muller, where do you live?
I live across the street, diagonally from the house. I knew the lady that lived in our house for many years, an elderly lady by the name of Miss Lillian Shoemaker. She was the last descendant of the people that owned one of those farmhouses. And she wrote a history that is part of our heritage. I want to see that heritage continued. This house is one of only 5 remaining. And indeed, the sector plan that was mentioned by my good friend, Attorney Harris, In fact, the sector plan urges low-rise development, but we are not doing this as far as development. We're doing this to save what is there so you can see the difference between what used to be there and what is there now.
So you live in a high-rise across the
Yes,
street?
ma'am.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
There are 5 present buildings left of the original ones. This is the very oldest. The first buildings were not built until 1902. One of the other 4 buildings the village does own. We bought it in the 1970s? 80s. The 1980s.
Commissioner Doman.
Yes, this is Commissioner Dolman. I respect your love of this house. Obviously, you have been a longtime resident of the village of Friendship Heights, and you have speak very passionately about preserving this house, and I understand why, I think. As I mentioned before, I did drive down to take a look at it, and it does stand out. It is very well preserved on the thing. The question, I guess, is, does it qualify as of historic significance? And the staff report basically says, not from the architectural features or from prominent person or event that might have occurred at this house. I mean, I'm in favor of preserving this house, but I wonder if it would not be better served as a private procurement through the village. I mean, you can still accomplish everything that you want. It can still be there at that property. It can still be viewed by the buses that go up and down High Street and everything. Is that not a very viable option instead of having it designated as a historic property? Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner, for the question. Yes, it is. It's certainly something that we strive to do as the village, but it's not a guarantee. We are negotiating in good faith. We've had very positive signals, and I hope that the Estrada family is going to continue to react positively, but there's no guarantee. There's no reason we can't do both, and there's no guarantee that if we don't get historical preservation, that we will be assured of being able to purchase the house.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, I believe thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming here. Now we'll start deliberations. Would anyone like to start off with any suggestions? Commissioner Burdett.
It's been an interesting review of the material and of the property, especially when you consider the development that's gone on around it. I just did some quick math, and I may be wrong on this, but the house is 115 years old. And in that past 115 years, most of the development that came up around it came in the last 60 years, 50 to 60 years. And I wonder, in 115 years, what that community will be like. We can almost be certain that it will not be a bucolic, rural, or residential neighborhood with streets and gardens and barns and garages, but it will probably not be the multifamily high-rises that are there now. There will probably be taller high-rises there next. And it concerns me that we are losing the layers of history in our communities. That a couple of little houses that are all that remains of, the people who live there, are going to be lost, and they're never going to come back. And it's not going to take but 10 years for people to never remember that they were there at all. And something will be lost. And in 100 years, when the current set of buildings have been replaced, there will be absolutely nothing that tells anybody what was there other than books. Historic preservation has been under a lot, has been has been under a lot of pressure in the last 10 years to broaden its perspective from preserving those buildings that where rich white men did significant things because they were rich white men who held all the power. And those were the buildings we saved. And preservation has done an admirable job in the last 10 years to broaden that to include other groups, other minority groups, to include working class, craftsman class, commercial class, residents, developments, and buildings. To the point now where when you look at what is up for designation, it would be something that you would never have imagined 20 years ago would even be considered. And a lot of that is going to be buildings that are fairly recent in the last 40 to 50 years are going to be up for designation and get designated. And not because of their architectural merits, but because of who and what happened in those buildings or around those buildings. And what happened may not even be politically significant, it just may be culturally significant to a group. So saying this, I don't think letting one little building, I think it is significant if one little building is lost, because it is one of the last buildings in that community that remains. And it was one of the first buildings in that community that was built. And that in itself means something. And that people who live in the buildings around it, all those high rises, can look down off their balconies and see this little remnant and know their place in the history of Friendship Heights because of that reference point. And if we lose that reference point, then we're going to lose a layer of our history in that community. And I think that's worth keeping in mind. Because just because it's the last doesn't diminish it and doesn't mean it's easier to get rid of because it doesn't meet the criteria, especially when the criteria are changing even now within this historic preservation realm.
Thank you. Anyone else? Commissioner Haynes.
I went there this morning to look at the site, and I'd not been by that house before, but I knew the area. My daughter lived in one of the high rises just around the corner for some time. And upon arriving, it was very clear I was at the right place, that the house immediately stood out against these high-rise condos. And I do think that while similar to Commissioner Burdett's comments, that it is significant in that it does represent a time and period of the village, even though the architecture or the occupants may not have been as significant. I think what would be really great is if the village could purchase it and turn it into a museum of history for the village. So I'm a little bit torn about it because on one hand it seems like a very simple, it's been structure, it's been modified and maybe not even in its pure original state, but at the same time I do agree with Commissioner Burdett that we losing that, and presumably if we lose that, you will lose the other smaller houses that are of similar vintage, and there will be absolutely no recollection of the history. So that whole little block there is kind of the last remaining vestige of that time frame. So I and my feeling is that it would be great for the village to purchase it, make something community-oriented out of it, other than commercial, like I said, something that would bring the community to it, that it could talk about the history of the village. But I do think there is significant value in that it does represent a time and place of the village. Thank you.
Commissioner Doman.
Yes. As I had previously spoken on the thing, I think this is a very attractive little house, and I think it really stands out when you drive by. You can't miss this little house that's out there. It's been well maintained. I would like to see it preserved for the reasons that have been spoken about. But I go back to the staff report and also the significance of this house and architectural features of this house. I support the village acquiring the house, and as Commissioner Jeff Haynes mentioned, to make this available as a community resource. I think that would be a great. And I also have to give some credit to the owner. We do not necessarily should go against the wishes of an owner. They have a right to this property, and they have a right to speak in what the disposition of this property should be. So, as I'd mentioned earlier, I support maintaining the house, but I don't necessarily think it falls under historic preservation criteria. Thank you.
Anyone
Go
else?
next.
Commissioner Nasser.
This is Commissioner Nasser. I kind of have a mixed feeling. If we just follow the criteria, of course, as the staff reported, there are no significant in architecture or historic events. But I also agree with Commissioner Burdett and Commissioner Haynes. But at the same time, I think this, if we follow the criteria and if we don't want to bring hardship to the owner, and the best outcome would be the purchase of the property by the village. And you should think about it. If you had done this 40 years ago, what would have happened now? So you have to look into the future and see okay, what's going to happen in 40 years, in 50 years? And the best outcome is to just the community get together, purchase the property, and maintain it. But I don't support the historic designation.
If there are no other comments, I believe that we would, at this point, welcome a motion. And the motion should be worded in such a way that we would either recommend approval of this house, the, get it here in a minute, Joseph Piles House at 4608 North Park Avenue in Chevy Chase. We approve its designation as a locational atlas site to the County Planning Commission, or we recommend that it not be approved for designation on the locational atlas by the County Planning Commission. So I would welcome a motion by any commission member.
I'll make a motion.
Commissioner Haynes?
I make a motion that we approve the application for the local atlas of 4608 North Park Avenue, Chevy Chase, Maryland, that it is of significant to the village and therefore should be on the locational atlas.
This is Commissioner Burdett. I support Commissioner Haynes' motion to put this building on the locational atlas.
Would that be a second?
I second the motion, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Sutton,
Yes.
members of the commission, this is Rebecca Ballo with the staff. As part of your motion, you need to cite at least one specific criterion from 24A3B to support your motion. Thank you.
If you could restate the motion with that, that would be good.
If it would help, we can put the slide back up that has the criteria. If we could broadcast out the staff computer again, and we'll put that back up for everybody. Thank you.
I'm going to amend my motion to say that I make a motion to approve the Joseph Pyle House on the locational atlas at 4608 North Park Avenue, Chevy Chase, based on the criteria listed on 24A3, evaluation criteria 1. And to clarify that, 1A specifically. Thank you.
I second Commissioner Haynes's amended motion that the designation criteria be for 24A-3, 1A of historical and cultural significance.
Thank you. Now I would like to take a roll call vote, starting on my left side, Commissioner Nasser. And what you would be voting for, if you agree with the motion, you vote yes. If you disagree with the motion, you vote no. Thank you. Commissioner Nasser.
This is Commissioner Nasser, no.
Commissioner Haynes, yes.
Commissioner Burdett, yes.
Commissioner Rado, no.
Commissioner Dolman, no.
Commissioner Pelletier, no.
Chair Sutton, yes. So we have, I believe, 4 no.
The vote is 3-4. The vote fails.
Thank you. So we will,
There needs to be another motion.
yes. So would anyone like to make another motion?
Should I try?
Go for it.
I make a motion that we accept the staff report for the Pyle House at 2608 North High Street, that we deny listing it on the locational atlas for Montgomery County.
This is Commissioner Pelletier. I second the motion.
Take a roll call vote again, starting with Commissioner Nasser. Now, this time, if you vote that we do not recommend passing this for approval to the locational atlas to the county commission, you will vote yes. If you are not in favor, of this motion, you will vote no. Commissioner Nasser.
This is Commissioner Nasser, yes.
Commissioner Haynes, no.
Commissioner Burdett, no.
Rado, yes.
Commissioner Dolman, yes.
Commissioner Pelletier, yes.
Commissioner Chair Sutton, no. Yes, we did. Yes, we did. So the motion passes that we do not recommend that this be listed in the locational atlas. But I think for the community, you recognize that many of us think that it's very significant, even though it's not listed. So thank you very much to all of you. Okay. Next on our agenda, we will consider properties for designation, historic area work permits that we believe can be expedited. Have these work permits been advertised?
Yes, they were advertised in the June 8th edition of the Washington Times.
Thank you. Is anyone here to speak in opposition to number 2A at 7324 Carroll Avenue in Tacoma Park? Item 1C at 36 Quincy Street, Chevy Chase. 1F at 6910 Westmoreland Avenue in Tacoma Park. 2G at 23630 Woodfield Road, Gaithersburg, and 1H at 8 East Irving Street, Chevy Chase.
Mr. Chair, hearing no objections, I move that we approve the following historic area work permits in accordance with the staff reports based upon the record before us and in consideration of the recommendations of the local advisory panels, including the conditions recommended by staff. HOP number 994004 at 7324 Carroll Avenue, Tacoma Park. HOP number 994665 at 36 Quincy Street, Chevy Chase. HOP number 995187 at 6910 Westmoreland Avenue, Tacoma Park. HOP number 993932 at 23630 Woodfield Road, Gaithersburg. And HOP number 988112 at 8 East Irving Street, Chevy Chase.
Is there a second?
This is Commissioner Haynes, I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Thank you for preparing projects that could easily be approved. If you need to talk to staff, they are available tomorrow to speak with any project, any part of your project. We will now have a hearing on a project at 11650 Snowden Farm Parkway in Germantown, which is a master plan site known as the House Farm. Is there a staff report?
There is, Mr. Chair. I just want to point out that the applicants have been notified but are not in attendance. Staff's recommendation is that we make our presentation and answer any questions that the commissioners may have. At that point, they can render a decision with the option of electing to defer until the next meeting. We can satisfy the 45-day requirement under deferral.
Thank you.
So this is the staff report for the historic area work permit at 11650 Snowden Farm Parkway in Germantown. It is the House Farm master plan site. It was constructed circa 1884 with modifications throughout the 1920s, and most of the accessory buildings were constructed in the 1920s and 1930s. We should be relatively familiar with these criteria. It was listed on the master plan under 3 criteria. 1A specifically called out as an excellent example of late 19th and early 20th century family farm in the Clarksburg area. Criteria 2A for embodying the distinctive characteristics of a high-style Gothic revival farmhouse. And criteria 2E is an established and familiar feature in the community once dominated by family farms. And as you'll note from the overhead here, over the 1990s and the current century, family farms are no longer part of the landscape. So the HPC considered a HOP in February to consider the demolition of 4 structures, an abandoned silo, and 3 buildings that are under consideration at this hearing. Demolishing the silo was approved, but the HPC found more information was necessary to effectively evaluate the outbuildings. And those 3 buildings are the handyman house, the pump room, and the dairy equipment / hen house. Again, this is an overview of the property. This is their current master plan proposal. Staff is still supportive of it. Again, the proposal is to turn the farm site into a religious and cultural site with a multi-use building, which is identified as number 1, and formal gardens to the rear. That master plan necessitates removing these 3 buildings because there is a proposed access road to provide access to the buildings. So again, these are the three buildings. They stand between the historic house and the principal barn on site. The applicants provided some videos. The quality isn't great, but I don't believe that these transmitted well to your board book, so we're going to run through those relatively quickly here. They allow you to see the buildings in 3 dimensions. And this is the second video. I believe this is the pump room, or pump house. Commissioner Pelletier, I take that back. This is the handyman house. So the applicant also provided additional photographs, some of which are detailed in front of you. They show the conditions of the building, which identify rot and some structural deficiencies. So staff finds that the 3 small frame outbuildings were integral to the farm operation and date to the property's period of significance. Staff finds that these outbuildings all retain the integrity of setting materials and character, and staff finds that these are rare surviving examples of family farm outbuildings. Staff site visit revealed that there are significant structural and material deficiencies in all 3 of the buildings. However, first, that these are traditionally constructed buildings that are frame. It would be easy to replace rotten wood members with structurally sound wooden members. And staff finds still that the submitted documentation does not demonstrate that the buildings have deteriorated beyond repair and that the applicant has failed to meet its burden of persuasion. Staff's recommendation is that the HPC deny the demolition of the 3 outbuildings under Chapter 24A8A, because it contravenes 24A8B1 and standards 2, 5, and 6. In the alternative, staff finds there could be support to relocate and stabilize the buildings on new foundations directly behind the house. This would preserve the buildings and the relationship between the farmhouse, the outbuilding, and the principal barn. And this solution would enable the applicant to construct the drive in their preferred location. Staff also finds that this solution could increase utilization of the site and could be justified under the balancing test prescribed in 24A8B3. The HPC could also identify other forms of mitigation that could be added as a condition to approval. In the staff report, staff suggested interpretive signage along Snowden Farm Parkway could prove sufficient under 24A8B6. Basically stating that the preservation of the resource is balanced with the site use and public benefit. Staff's recommendation identified in the staff report would be 2 signs that focus on the site history, and a 3rd sign could focus on dairy farming in Montgomery County. The HPC could include a requirement in the approval that the signs be installed or at least ordered before any other hops on site, as those will be needed in the future for both the formal gardens and the multi-purpose building. Much of the other work proposed in the interim will be repair or replacement in kind, which doesn't require HPC review. So staff finds that including that type of requirement in a condition would not be unduly burdensome on the applicant. And staff will answer any questions that the commissioners have at this time.
Any commissioners have questions? Commissioner Haynes?
Thank you. Are the condition of the outbuildings such that they could be moved, or would they end up being kind of a total reconstruction?
Well, so that is one of those parts where the applicant hasn't, to staff's, the applicant hasn't met their burden of persuasion to staff's satisfaction. We'd recognized that we hoped that the applicant could at least provide a quantitative evaluation to say, 50% of the structure is not salvageable and needs to get replaced, and being able to consider that information may have changed staff's recommendation. I certainly think it would be a challenge, but these are relatively small buildings, and they could be stabilized before they're moved, and then the finish work could be taken care of on their new foundation. So it's certainly possible, but whether or not what the amount that needs to be replaced is so significant that they would effectively be reconstructions or 2022 construction is something that we can't answer at this point.
Is the space between the main house and these outbuildings enough to be access, to provide that access that they need, site access?
Well, let me go to, so this is their current proposed site plan. We have, they're taking advantage of the existing curb cut on Snowden Farm Parkway, and then their proposal is to utilize a new driveway to their parking lot, which would continue on beyond the current location. So, if those buildings were moved, it would provide vehicular access both to the existing barn and to utilize the garden. The existing access road goes to the south of the building here, which is, the applicants have said that's further out of their way than they're interested in doing. Also, that impacts the proposed garden and the statuary in the garden.
Commissioner Doman?
Yes, this is, I guess, for the record. I did visit the property. The meeting when they were here was on February 2nd, and at that time they offered an invitation to us commissioners to go out there and to view the property. So I arranged a visit on February 12th, and I met with Pomerad KC, and I spent well over an hour at the property. I walked the whole boundary line of the property. I had a complete tour of the house and the basement of the house, the Howe house out there. I looked at the silo and the residual of the barn wall that's there, bank barn. And these three buildings that are in question, I made a thorough investigation of them. Now, my background is in carpentry. Okay, I'm retired now, but a home improvement contractor license, and I have held a master carpenter significance with the National Association of Remodeling Industry, and I will tell you, are really not worth saving. I mean, if you try to do anything with them, you're going to rebuild them. I mean, the floor is rotted out, the foundation is rotted out, many of the walls are rotted out. I would not consider these things salvageable. I think there was also a report on the February second meeting when they were here, didn't they have a structural engineer report also with this?
So the engineer's report recommended that the outbuildings be demolished due to their poor condition and because they would not serve a function as part of the redevelopment plan. That's actually on your screen now.
All right.
It did not provide any sort of quantitative or specific, it spoke in generalities that didn't allow us to do a sufficient analysis. And when that was presented to the commissioners, it was, I believe, a 6-3 vote. The commissioners determined that that was not sufficient evidence on its own to vote for the demolition, and they voted to defer consideration of those until there was more information.
Now, I find myself in a difficult position because I end up speaking on behalf of the applicant, which I don't want to do, but I have reviewed the buildings, and I have made an assessment of the buildings, okay, and these buildings are not worth saving, and they are deteriorated beyond the point of you can do anything with them. I mean, if you tried to jack them up and move them, you'd be moving rotted wood to the back. And the other thing is you could do is you could reconstruct a brand new one, which then kind of defeats the whole purpose of, I don't know, trying to save an old building anyway. I think, and I don't mean this, I know this is a question to the staff, but my question, all I'm saying is I wanted known that I did go out there and I did talk to the applicant, and the applicant is not here today. I wish they were here today because they could then present additional information. So I can contradict some of your statements that you made.
I mean, again, if I may, my conclusions are simply that the applicant has not provided sufficient information for staff satisfaction. And that includes multiple site visits, including the first visit where there was so much junk piled in there that we couldn't so much as stick our head in. So your experience based on your site visit came to a different conclusion than ours. And again, as I said in my introduction, the commissioners have a sort of a menu of options that they can do with the case today, even without the applicant here, up to and including approval, denial, deferral, or identifying conditions that are satisfactory to get a majority of the commissioners here to vote for an approval. So, I don't find your comments contradictory. Your comments are your comments based on your site visit, which is completely appropriate to share. And I'm happy to, again, I'm still here to answer any questions that you have. And, when it's time for deliberations, I think your commissioners will take your comments under consideration.
Any other questions for staff?
This is Rebecca Ballo for the staff. The only thing that I would like to add to what Dan said in response to Commissioner Doman's comments is that, we as the staff and the general public too also depend on your professional expertise. We are architectural historians and urban planners, which is why for so much of these applications we depend on, the applicants submitting their professional evidence, and then also we are fortunate to have on the commission professionals in the field, such as yourself, who have worked with these buildings in a way that we have not. We don't do capital improvement work here. So I just wanted to add for the record that we're deeply appreciative of your comments and your experience, and also recounting for us and for the commission your site visit. So thank you.
And not to pile on, but one of the things that we've talked about in training in the past is defensible decision making. So for us, based on the evidence that's presented, we don't find that the decision is defensible. Now, again, as Rebecca said, Commissioner Doman, with your expertise, you can come to a conclusion beyond what we can based on the information submitted. So I'm just putting that out there that staff is being relatively conservative in their application of, or in our analysis, coming to some conclusion and a recommendation.
Commissioner Pelletier, did you have a comment?
My question was answered.
Okay, I thought, okay. Commissioner Burdett.
Yes, I mean, considering in this last year, we've seen a property that was in as equal, if not more precarious existing state, and that owner, and we gave approval for that owner to their plan to restore that property, which included extensive reconstruction with new material, but preserving some elements of the existing. And we don't do precedents, but I think that these three buildings have are part of the historic context to the house and to the property. And as with that other case, we have observed or have learned that it is possible to dismantle a small building and reconstruct it. And that is a doable thing, and that is an approvable process.
This is Rebecca Ballo. I believe I know the property in question that you are referring to on Old Georgetown Road, the master plan site, the store. And there was just that building left. And here we do have a collection of vernacular buildings that support and add to the sort of total significance of the setting of this as a dairy farm. And it is also, as Dan pointed out, the staff really, I won't say we struggled with it, but we weighed a number of considerations here. And this commission in the past has approved rebuilding, reconstructing buildings that are where the materials are no longer salvageable, and that is a defensible and supportable historic, preservation treatment supported by the Park Service and supported by precedent of this commission. So I'm not sure if you had a question for me with that, but I agree with what you've said.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, this is
Commissioner Pelletier.
Different question. Can you go back to, in the report, what our options, like, I know we have other options, but what your suggestions for what we could decide on?
Right. So the first is relocate and stabilize on new foundations. Sorry, let me go back here.
Just a quick summary of
So
that.
so specifically, these three buildings could be relocated here, directly behind the house. Staff's analysis says that would preserve the relationship between the residence and the principal barn. So it would be, house, three small outbuildings, barn, and that would be retained. The other alternative is installing interpretive signage, ideally along Snowden Farm Parkway. It would basically be, in this location looking towards the farm. As the aerial photograph shows, suburbia is built up around this, and it's not a dairy farm setting anymore. So preserving this vista, preserving, being able to tell the surrounding community the story of both this site and dairy farming and the county writ large, that staff could agree that the community would be better served by including that interpretive signage, and would accept the loss of those three buildings as sort of compensation and mitigation.
Okay. Or restoring the buildings in place. Right?
Well, and again, the applicant has a proposal, staff's recommending the HPC deny it, and the result would either be a counter proposal from the applicant or restore the buildings. So our, at this point, the staff's position is the applicant hasn't met their burden of persuasion, and the HPC should deny the demolition request.
Oh, okay.
Which would demand that they retain the buildings, and then the demolition by neglect provision of Chapter 24A would effectively kick in, and they would have to work to stabilize the buildings.
Okay.
I would not recommend a deferral, because I believe that what we are doing now is looking at a project that has not changed significantly since we deferred it several months ago. Is that correct?
I mean, again, the reason that these were deferred in the first place was a request for more information.
And No, we do
We
not
didn't get
believe
it.
that significantly greater information has been provided by the applicant. Is that correct?
Correct. And staff is relatively certain that staff feels confident that the specific, the level of specificity required to make that determination has been something that's been difficult to impossible to pull out of the applicant.
Okay.
And that, the HPC rendering this decision based on either the information presented in the application or information presented during a hearing would be sufficient to allow the HPC to make that determination.
And I don't believe that we could reasonably make a condition that the buildings be moved. Would that be correct?
I mean, if the commissioners feel that is necessary for an approvable project, then yes, it is, yes, I think they can.
I had one other question. Oh, sorry.
I'm going to recognize Commissioner Radu first.
Okay.
I have a question. From the image you had on the screen earlier from the road, you see the house and you see, I think, a little bit some of these structures, yeah? The back there. So if they were to be removed in the location you're suggesting next to the house or
They would be
there,
directly behind the house
so they would not be visible.
from the
So-
public right-of-way, right?
I mean, we are still talking about the public right-of-way in general, no? I mean, like,
Well,
what's the perception?
So as a master plan site, we do consider these in the round. So some of these are, the relationship between the buildings, if they're deemed significant, should be preserved. But unlike a district where the district is the resource, the whole site is the resource. So you're not bound by just this view when you're considering the changes to the site.
And thank you. And the other question is, like, in general for farms, in my experience is that this sort of outbuildings move a lot. I mean, like the farmer takes a building and reconstructs it in a different place, or, I mean, they don't really sit on the same site, I mean, for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, these have concrete foundations and metal roofs, which suggest, they wanted them to be relatively durable. But yes, in a family farm setting, these things would be moved to wherever it was in the farmer's interest to have them be.
Thank you.
Commissioner Pelletier?
So there's 3 buildings, and we saw videos of 2. And the last one, there's a photo, the one with the gable roof, that one. So I'm asking Commissioner Dolman, is that one? Hello, Commissioner Dolman?
Yes, I'm listening.
Is that one that's on the screen, is that in any better condition, because it looks it from the outside, than the other 2? Or are they all a loss?
I'm hard pressed to, I've got my own pictures that I took when I was out there on February 12th. And maybe, I think 2 of them are total loss, and one may be, and I don't know which one is which because they all kind of blend together in sequence, which one is the pump house or the hen house or the handyman shack. I don't know which one is which right now. One of them was lived in for quite a while. A handyman or somebody lived in this thing, and it still had personal effects in the thing. So that may have been the better one of the 3 of them. The other one's foundation is shot. You couldn't jack the thing up and move it.
Well,
Impossible.
yeah, I'm just wondering, as far as the view from the road, I believe it's this one that's on the screen, is the one that you can see.
Correct. The gable roof is visible from the road.
And it also looks to be in the best condition. I don't know if it's possible to save one.
I mean,
you know.
they're all pretty sorry, but perhaps,
That's an understatement.
Right. So just in looking at, the view from the road, and this one, that in the site plan, that this one may not interfere with their plans as much as the other 2. I don't know if there's a case to be made for saving one. I'm not a big proponent of moving things around the site, especially things that are going to fall apart when you pick them up. But that one, since it does have a lot of visual significance from the road, and I went out there and visited a while back, when this first came up, and that building was definitely part of the assemblage, as it were. So I think, in my mind, that might be another possibility to save, maybe not demolish all three, save one, let the other two fall to their deaths or whatever. But my question is that an option?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, the applicant, again, the applicant's not here, so, they, with more information, they would be able to come and submit it would be a new hop for that building specifically with additional information to present that.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Burdett?
I have a real question this time. The plan that's included in the package this time is different from the prior plan. And it is, I believe, the third version that they've given to us?
It's the third version that you've seen. It's either the fourth or fifth version that we've seen. So
Are they getting closer, or are they still working on this?
this was submitted with the additional materials. So, there wasn't engineering information beyond what you see. So, whether or not this represents a real step forward or is just another iteration is something that we're not in a position to state one way or the other.
Yeah, because apparently from the plan, the driveway and the route around past the existing house and around those buildings and avoiding the barn to their buildings is significantly different than the two prior versions. Okay, thank you.
Correct.
Commissioner Haynes, did you?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Commissioner Pelletier?
Now that I'm looking at this, is building number 1 is a brand-new building?
That's correct. Building 12 was the small gable building that you were questioning whether or not it could be salvaged. So 12, 11, and 10 are the three specific outbuildings.
Right.
Building 1 is their sanctuary space and multipurpose room, which is way down the line.
Didn't in the previous iteration, wasn't building 6 wasn't the barn gonna become their big sanctuary?
Only as a temporary basis, that it doesn't have the square footage necessary and that interior walls can be removed to make the volume as big as what they need.
Okay.
There's always been a plan to have an additional building constructed on the site.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Pelletier, and for other members of the commission, this really represents a multi-phased master plan of this property. And I think it's important for the commissioners to know as well that the applicant has been in constant communication with Dan about renovations to the historic house. I feel comfortable saying for them in this context that they have been responsive and responsible stewards since they have acquired the property. They have moved mountains of trash off of the site. They have been investigating the proper type of roof to put on the historic house, and they have really cleaned it up. However, just the renovation of the historic house in and of itself, from what everybody's seen, will cost many, many thousands of dollars. The ultimate build-out of this master plan in today's prices looks to be something maybe on like the order of $10 to $15 million. I mean, they're talking about many, many buildings that they are looking here to do here. So this is an aspirational plan that they are working towards, and that's part of what the staff looked at with our consideration is and part of Dan's advice working with them is to help properly phase their time and their assets to restoring the house and then looking at other features while they work, amongst themselves as a community to build out their ultimate vision for this. So while this is what we have, as the basis for our discussions, it's still a ways in the future.
I believe it would be appropriate to welcome a motion, if someone would like to make one.
Commissioner Burdett, I'll make a motion. Are we, what, am I?
I thought we were discussing.
It's deliberation.
Are we continuing discussion?
I didn't know we were.
These were
I thought we
questions
asking
and then
questions.
it's
I thought we were doing
deliberation.
questions to staff.
Okay, now we're deliberation, I'm sorry.
Thank you. And so I'll kick off since I'm opening my mouth. For me, there's two issues. There is the conditions of the structures, which by photographs and Commissioner Doman's comments, yeah, they're in bad shape. Would be certainly hard to move them. And, at this point, they're probably going to practically rebuild them. Now, that said, if we're talking about preserving the context of this family farm, those buildings are critical. As we can see from the street, we have a sense of the main house and the outbuildings, and the barn roof beyond, I think, is what we're looking at. And so from the context of the site, those three buildings, I feel, are significant to explaining the nature of the family farm, and even the grouping where they are located relative to the barn is a snapshot of where the buildings were located at that time, and therefore I think ought to remain there. I'm kind of the mindset that we should be open to rebuilding in kind, same materials, same profiles, reconstruction. I guess we're calling it a reconstruction. Maybe there are certain materials that could be maybe siding on the upper the top of the walls could be preserved and replicated for the lower portions, things like that. But the other comment I want to make is that, and I'm comparing this to Park Avenue and Old Georgetown. Old Georgetown, the site itself is not what it used to be, but the significance to the community of that building we voted for. And same way here, you take away these three buildings, we've already got rid of one silo, but we begin to wash away the context of this site and the experience for visitors of the family farm experience. And so that is the argument I was trying to make for Park Avenue, is that, yeah, we lost a lot of the site context on Park Avenue, but its history relative to a point in time was significant enough for me to make a motion to keep it on there or put it on the locational atlas. But that's getting away from the point here, is that I think the three buildings add significantly. In moving them, I don't favor that as, again, I don't see the point, because they would have to be rebuilt, and we should rebuild them where they are as a snapshot of time, and how they are organized relative to the barn, to the house, to the silo, actually is a tight knit. You can experience all those buildings as you get to those buildings, versus if they were moved to the other side of the house, then you begin to, I feel, I think it's a kind of a nicely composed construction of buildings that form that. And then they have the rest of the site to do what they want to do. So I think, that's what I think, that we should keep them, we should reconstruct them, and they should stay where they're at.
Any other comment? Comments in part of deliberation?
I agree with Commissioner Haynes' comments totally. I'd like to add that I'm in opposition to signage, historic signage, because I am not a supporter of signage. I've seen a lot of it around the county, and in some places it's very nice, and in other places it's totally lost. And I think on this busy street, multi-lane roadway, not quite a highway, but it's awfully fast. Who's going to ever stop and see those signs? No one's going to be walking down that side of the street because it's busy and there's no trees there and it's open. So short of the occasional cyclist coming down and stopping or family cycling by, I just don't see anybody ever looking at the signs. So then it's just another, let's tear down a building and put up a sign and pretend we've done a good thing. And I think in this case, it's not going to work. So I support, I support denying their application for demolition of these 3 buildings, and I would support relocating them close by and rebuilding them, restoring them, whatever it takes, dismantling them and rebuilding them. That's where I stand.
If I can just jump in and correct something, Chairman Burdett, there is a 10-foot wide multi-use path on the south side, or south and west side of Snowden Farm Parkway. So while it is 4-lane wide and I think 40 miles an hour, there is a pedestrian bike path that goes right in front of the entrance to the park. So,
Do you know if it's used?
I mean, there's a large neighborhood around it, so I've seen it used on several of my site visits.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Doman.
Yes, this is Commissioner Doman. I don't know. If this, well, first of all, I have to kind of reiterate what Rebecca has said, that the applicant has done a great job in preserving the property. I did take a tour through the home, and they have spent a lot of money, a lot of effort has gone into it. They have heating issues that they're contending with. They have water issues. They also have a septic system that is, I don't know where it is. I don't think they do. There's some kind of a septic system out there. I mean, they have a big, big project going on. And as you mentioned, it may up be in the tens of millions of dollars on the thing, and it's not going to happen right away. And in the context of this, right now, if we're trying to save this as some kind of a pastoral setting with a house and a dairy farm and outbuildings, that's one thing. But this is going to turn into an educational and cultural center for a Buddhist community. And there will be gardens there. There will be a fountain. The context of this property will change drastically, if not this year and next year, but when enough funds are accumulated, this property will not look like a farm anymore. It'll be a Buddhist educational and cultural center, and people will be coming and going to this. And the reason they want these 3 buildings removed is because they're trying to optimize a straight in to the parking lot into this new building that they propose to build. I mean, leaving the buildings where they are really upsets their long-term plan. And I don't know how much communication you had with them on a thing. I mean, I know, I actually have seen this when I was out there in early February. I saw this chart, and I know what they want to do, and I just wish that the applicant was here, because I just don't think it's fair for us to sit here and make these decisions without the applicant being here. And I know the comment was made that this is the second time or the third time that they've been here, but I don't think we should make, at this particular time, any decision on this particular application until the applicant is here to defend himself or to make a presentation or to clarify information. I can talk to the condition of the buildings, because I was out there and I walked the property and I looked at the house and all the outbuildings and the thing. And I think they're doing a conscientious job, and I think it'll be a benefit to the community to have this thing move ahead. And I just hate to see us maintain or deny this because we want to keep these old buildings where they are. And I just think that it's defeating to them after they've acquired this property and put a lot of effort, money into this house restoration. So I support the demolition of these buildings, and I do not agree with staff that we deny the application to demolish the building. So that's where I stand. Thank you.
Any other? Commissioner Pelletier.
This is Commissioner Pelletier. I don't support rebuilding in kind. I think if something is in bad condition and it's going to fall down, let it fall down. I don't get any. I don't see any benefit when I go to properties where something has been rebuilt in kind. It doesn't really mean the same thing on the site. I also I'm not in support of moving the buildings because that's just kind of the same thing. I would be in support of demolishing anything that's in really bad shape. If one of these is in good shape and can be salvaged and can be worked into their plans, I would support saving it. If anything could be saved, I would support saving it. But from what I've seen here and from what Commissioner Dolman has described, if they're not salvageable, don't salvage them. And that's my point of view. Thank you.
I would like to comment. I spent my youth, a lot of my youth, on a family ranch in Eastern Oregon that was started by my great-grandfather. And my grandfather had had part of the farm. Other relatives had parts of the farm. What typically happens on a farm is when a farmer needs something, they keep it. If they don't need it, they tear it down. That's just part of farming. One thing that upset my mother, my uncle, and my grandfather was that one of the cousins tore down the house that they were born in. It was nothing. I mean, it was just a plain old house, but he didn't need it. It was in the way of his farming operation, and he tore it down. I think that part of farming is that if you don't need something, you don't keep it anymore. You do something else. And I kind of feel like in this case, these three buildings just no longer have significant use for the property. And so I'm with Commissioner Doman on this issue. Now, if there are any more comments, I would welcome a motion.
Make a comment before the motion.
You may absolutely make a comment, Commissioner Radu.
I just wanted to disagree with Commissioner Burdett about signage. I think in this day and age, a lot of people don't know what a dairy farm was, and just looking at some little sheds won't give them a lot more information about that. So I think signs would be beneficial.
I'd like to throw in some more comments since we're.
Commissioner Haynes.
I think we should have both end. I think we should have signs to explain the nature of the history of the property, and we should have the physical representation of the property. I don't think it's about the individual outbuildings. It's about the collection of the buildings, the barn, the house, the outbuildings as a collection that explains the environment of farming, of a family farm. So that's, and otherwise, why do we have it listed as a master plan site if we're going to get rid of the whole context? What happens when the barn needs work and that's falling apart, and so we tear that down too. And now we're left with just the house. Yes, I applaud them for doing a great job on the house, but if as a commission, we're trying to preserve not just the architecture, but the context, significance of a farm, what it means, visitors, if it's laid out right where they can experience passing through the house by the outbuildings and see the barn and beyond, then they will get a sense of what the farmers would have experienced coming out of the house and sort of daily living. Yes, it's going to be surrounded, it's this farm context surrounded by this new context of the owners. But I think the beauty of the site is that you have this long road from the street, as you would in the original farming days, and it passes between the house and these outbuildings, and we immediately have a sense of the significance of all the building grouping, and that's the context. And so you take out 30% of those buildings, and you're left with very little context, and it's the same thing as Park Avenue. So what are we doing as a commission? Are we preserving, or are we getting rid of context? Yeah, I would not, I wish the buildings were in better shape and we I think they would have to be reconstructions, but again, it is that collection of the physical environment that we're preserving in the context, and that's, for me, the reason to do it.
Commissioner Burdett, I make a motion that the commission vote to deny the demolition of the 3 outbuildings based on the staff report and under the criteria identified in 24A-8A and as being inconsistent with standards 2, 5, and 6. Do I have a second?
This is Commissioner Haynes, I'll second.
Thank you. I'd like to do a roll call vote. Commissioner Nasser?
I support the staff recommendation.
I'm sorry?
I support the staff recommendation against denying the,
So you vote aye with the motion?
Yes.
Thank you.
Commissioner Haynes, yes.
Commissioner Burdett, yes.
Commissioner Rado, no.
Commissioner Dolman, no.
Commissioner Pelletier, no.
Commissioner Sutton, no. So,
So what do we got?
We're 4-3.
do we have another motion?
I don't want to get.
I'll give it a go. I make a motion that we support the staff report?
No. That's what we just voted down.
Oh, that we do not support the staff report.
No, what you need to do
We
is you need to
support-
say
Okay.
that you approve the HOP application, which is that the buildings be demolished.
Ah,
So you need to state the HOP number, the address, the HOP number and the address, and say that you vote that we approve the historic area work permit.
And give the criteria that you are using as the
God.
basis for your approval.
this is all too much for me. Someone
No,
else
no.
can do this.
You can support the original application.
In other words, you're supporting the original application.
Right, do I have to give a,
You do. Kevin, can we get the sample motions, please?
Here you go.
Sorry, those should be out.
Here you go.
but I don't have the criteria. Can somebody?
It's okay, we got it.
I don't know the criteria.
So you move the
Blah, 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 blah.
number and
Right.
the address,
Mhm.
give the name of the master plan site, which is on the agenda. Finding the project is consistent with.
Jeez. Nobody's gonna like me anymore. I'll tell you. Building that
The students left before my LGBTQ presentation.
they moved it right across the street into Parkway. It is the biggest embarrassment for me on the commission. Someone comes up to us and says, "What's that stupid thing doing?" Well, we have to say it.
Resource.
They think we're totally worthless because we have had that for years. So we're going to use that as a criteria. We're saying that it shouldn't be
Or aid and protect.
That's completely wrong.
Resources will allow them.
Are you ready to make a motion?
We have to do it with a condition. What?
Would someone else like to make a motion?
Yeah, would someone else like to make a motion? Here, James, you do
I
it.
don't know if you either.
Come on. It's all right.
I move that the Historic Preservation Commission, in accordance with the standards set forth in Section 24A of the Montgomery County Code, approve how HAWP 994889, which is Master Plan Site number 1314, the Howe Farm, and the address is 11650 Snowden Farm Parkway. And finding that allowing their application for demolition of the three outbuildings would, the work would enhance or aid in protecting, preserving, and utilizing the resource. Number 3, 24A 8B3.
Great. Is there a second?
What's happening there?
Can I ask-
Yes.
I'm not making I don't want to bring this.
Right. Are you making a second?
No.
This
I
is-
just want to see if is there a condition? I mean, when is the time to add a condition to a motion?
You can make a friendly amendment.
I would like to make a friendly amendment.
Well, first of all, we need to have a second to the
Well,
motion.
Julie,
Oh, I was trying
Okay.
to second. This is Commissioner
Okay.
Pelletier. I
So we have
second.
a second. Now you can offer a friendly amendment that has to be accepted by the person who made the motion, and by the person who made the second.
So I would like to amend.
Something's going on with.
I
just
think
let it
everybody
sit
should.
for a minute.
I think everybody should just leave their microphones on.
It works.
Because it's
Okay.
being funny.
With one of the alternates that the staff report had about mitigation. And I would like to suggest adding the signage recommended in the report.
You accept that?
As one that made the amendment, or I accept the.
You accept the amendment to your motion?
Yeah, I
Thank you.
accept
Do you
the
accept the
amendment.
amendment as
I
a
do.
person who seconded?
Yes.
Thank you. Now, I'd like to take a roll call vote, starting on my left with Commissioner Nasser.
Someone needs to clarify things.
Okay, if you vote yes, you are approving the current motion that has been seconded with an amendment that signage be included on the property.
Which is demolishing the building.
Demolishing the buildings, that is correct.
So
So
then no.
if you say that you vote yes, you're approving that motion. If you vote no, you are not approving that motion.
No.
Thank you.
Commissioner Haynes, no.
Commissioner Burdett, no.
Commissioner Rogers, yes.
Commissioner Dolman, yes.
Commissioner Pelletier, yes.
Chair Sutton, yes. Thank you.
Right.
Can I check for just a second? Isaac, do we need to redo that because the mics weren't live, but did the room pick them up okay? Can everybody just, I'm so sorry. Please just leave your microphones on. Wait till they turn red. And we'll need to do the vote one more time for the record. I'm not sure what's going on with them. Try turning them off and turning them on again.
You know,
Just
mine
leaving
mine
it
is on. Everybody can come and vote on my,
Mine's on too.
I know it's going crazy, but mine's on for some reason.
Do you know, hold on, do we know what's going on? We can pass one of the, that's a good idea, thank you. We'll pass one of the portable mics around just to re-record the vote.
No.
Wait,
This is Commissioner Nasser, no.
Commissioner Haynes, no.
Commissioner Burdett, no.
Commissioner Rado, yes.
Commissioner Dolman, yes.
Commissioner Pelletier, no. Wait.
yes.
Yes.
Chair Sutton, yes. So the vote passes 4-3. Thank you. Okay,
Where did they go? Were they here for something?
tax credits. We're beginning to have tax credits. And what we have done in the past is we approve the ones that come, and we approve sending them on when we have all of them in one time. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. We do have Group 1 of the 2021 Historic Preservation Tax Credits. Group 1 includes 46 applications consisting of approximately $778,652.21. And we're asking that you approve these. Thank you.
Do I have a motion for approval? Yours is working, so would you mind making the motion?
This is Commissioner Rado. I make the motion to approve the tax credits.
This is Chair
And
Sutton. I
forward
second the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Now we have minutes, as in, I did not have a chance to review the minutes. Did anyone have a chance to review the minutes from the last meeting?
Yes.
Would you like to make a motion to approve the minutes?
Yes, this is Commissioner Doman. I make a motion that we approve the draft meeting minutes from the, was it June 8th?
Yes.
June 8th, Historic Preservation Commission meeting. You have a second?
Commissioner Haynes, I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any commission items?
I'll do it.
I believe we have 2 staff items.
Yes, Chair Sutton, thank you. The first staff item, staff is looking for the HPC to affirmatively direct the staff to prepare a letter summarizing your deliberations on the preliminary consultation for Hammer Hill for us to transmit to the planning board on your behalf.
I vote that or make a motion that we prepare a letter to send to the commission under my signature.
Is Commissioner Pelletier a second? Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you. And then I have a brief presentation that I'd like to give. Just one moment. So I believe because I'm on this Teams call, I'm just going to try sharing out my screen, frankly, through the Teams call. I think that might be the easiest way to do this. Okay, I believe that everybody can see my screen. So, June is recognized nationwide as Pride Month, and I gave a presentation with the planning director to the planning board last week that details the initiatives that Montgomery County Park and Planning Commission has undertaken in recognition of Pride Month, and a great deal of that presentation focused on our LGBTQ Heritage Project. So I wanted to give that report to you all tonight. Also, by way of introduction, we have a page on our website devoted to our LGBTQ Heritage Project, which has a number of these resources that I'm going to detail for you very briefly. So to start, the planning director for the planning board, and then I for you, would like to emphasize the MNC-PPC commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is a portion from the MNC-PPC Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Statement from June of 2021. In particularly, our agency strives to enhance inclusion with a true sense of belonging that encourages the participation of all individuals by removing barriers, building a culture of connectedness, and recognizing that everyone adds value to our organization. So this is an important statement of principles from our organization, not just in the work that we do serving the communities of Montgomery County, but also speaking to the culture that we foster within our own workplace at the Park and Planning Commission. So for Pride Month in 2022, so for a number of years now, at least the 3 or 4 years that I've been in the agency, there is a robust set of activities that we sponsor within our agency in commemoration of Pride Month, and there are also a number of events that are sponsored by our Parks Department, and then this is in addition to a number of other events that are sponsored by Montgomery County, and there's a link at the bottom. Our Montgomery County Council Vice President Evan Glass has supported many of these events and has highlighted them through his role on the council. I'll note here for June 26th, the Historic Preservation Office has been invited to table at Pride in the Plaza in downtown Silver Spring to give information about our LGBTQ heritage work, and we are excited to participate in that. That is this Sunday from 12 to 5, and then there'll be a pretty large party from 5 to 8. It's downtown in Veterans Plaza if you'd like to attend. So as I said, for Pride Month, the Commission sponsors our own activities. This was a panel discussion that we sponsored earlier this month. Brian Crane, our archaeologist, is up here. This was a panel that was called "There's No One Way to Be LGBTQIA." This was with commission staffers, and also we invited members from the community to talk about their experiences, being allies and being part of the LGBTQ community in Maryland. And it was a really moving, really good event. It's a wonderful thing to be part of an agency that is supportive of having these types of discussions in the workplace. So specifically to focus on our heritage project, so LGBTQ plus perspectives are underrepresented, not just in Maryland's historical narrative, but in the narrative of the United States. Montgomery County is associated with pioneering LGBTQ political leaders, legal advocates, and artists. And this was a center of activism, specifically there are a lot of significant events and individuals that are associated with the fight against employment discrimination and government inaction as part of the AIDS crisis. So to take us a little bit further back, since the Obama administration in the mid-2010s, the National Park Service released an LGBTQ context study, and a number of us who were in local governments here in the Washington, D.C. region, we convened a roundtable with the National Park Service and with NHL specifically to start brainstorming amongst ourselves what are the potential sites within our local communities that we might list, that might be eligible for listing to the National Register or that might be eligible as National Historic Landmarks. This work was started, sometime before our work here in the Washington, D.C. region. They're really pioneers in New York and in California. But it was the Park Service's context statement that really laid the groundwork for us to start doing this at the local government level. The Rainbow History Project in the district has been collecting LGBTQ histories and stories, oral histories and ephemera for many, many years. So our work is really just, again, bringing it here to what we do in the local government with the designation of historic sites and with the preparation of our master plan documents. So with all of that as a little bit of background, in 2018, Preservation Maryland, our statewide not-for-profit, was working with the Maryland Historical Trust, with our office, and with the City of Baltimore. We applied for a grant to author a statewide context statement on LGBTQ history in Maryland, and also to list individual sites in Montgomery County and the City of Baltimore, either to the National Register or to prepare forms to be part of the Maryland Inventory of Historic Properties. So our office, we were proud to support that effort, to be part of the grant effort, and we were also readers as part of the larger context survey. You can see the cover of it here that was approved out in 2020 is on the right. There's a link to this on our website. And it's a really wonderful document. We were really proud to be part of this. There are now 2 states within the United States that have done statewide context surveys, Maryland and Kentucky. And Kentucky's is also a fabulous read. I would recommend it. So again, specific to Montgomery County, here's the cover of the 2016 LGBTQ America study, and working on this statewide context helped us to further identify what are the sites, what are the stories that are specific to Montgomery County that we could start to study further. So as part of that effort, our consultant completed 2 MIHP forms. One is on the Susan Silber House. So Susan is a retired LGBTQ activist and lawyer who specialized in family and labor law, and her work was absolutely fundamental and critical to the success of equitable treatment for LGBTQ families and workers in Montgomery County and in Maryland. And Susan served as the attorney for the city of Tacoma Park for nearly 40 years, and she still lives in Tacoma Park. And then our second form was for the Bruce Williams House. Bruce was the first openly LGBTQ elected official in the state of Maryland. He was a City of Tacoma Park council member and the mayor of Tacoma Park. So in 2021, our office initiated a further planning effort. We received a CLG grant from the SHPO to list the Robert Coggin House to the National Register of Historic Places. Robert Coggin was the founder of the LGBTQ rights movement in Montgomery County. He formed the Suburban Maryland Gay Alliance in 1982. And again, his work was critical in securing passage of legislation prohibiting discrimination based on sexual orientation in Montgomery County in 1984. Before he moved to Montgomery County, he worked at NIH. He attended the University of Virginia. He was from Danville, Virginia. And when he was at UVA in the 1970s, he also formed the first gay student union that was on the campus. And he donated some of his papers to UVA, and the rest of his papers are held by the Rainbow History Project. So we have the draft in with this to the SHPO, and we are looking forward to bringing this nomination to you in the fall on its way to the National Park Service. So again, I just said what our next steps are for the Robert Coggin House, but we also take seriously our commitment to equity and inclusion, and we have been researching LGBTQ history as part of our current ongoing master plan efforts. We have partnered with Montgomery County Public Schools as part of their social studies curriculum for at least the past year. There is a portion of LGBTQ history that is part of the social studies curriculum, so I've been working with the teachers to share with them information about sites that we have locally, so they concentrate on sites of national, legal, social, cultural importance, but also sites that are right here in the county and here in Maryland. I've been part of a lecture series with Montgomery History. As I said, we've worked with the Montgomery County Department of Health and also have shared information with the MoCo Pride Youth Group. As part of this effort, I was contacted by a writer who she writes for Planning Magazine, and this is the professional magazine publication of the American Planning Association. She contacted our office, she contacted the folks at Preservation Maryland and the folks in Kentucky as well that had done their statewide context, and she wrote this article for the Planning Magazine talking about how to uncover and honor LGBTQ history in the built environment, because it is not just about researching and writing these histories and designating and nominating these sites. There's also a design component to our work too, about creating, inclusive and welcoming spaces, not just in the urban environment either, but in all of the environments that we plan for, and that making absolutely sure that people see themselves, as I said and as I mean it, that they see themselves reflected in our work, all of their stories, because there are so many stories here in Maryland, and as we've learned, we talk about, like, what is a space that is reflective of gay history? What is a queer space? It is the Naval Academy. It is Robert Coggin's house in Veer Mill Village. It is a bar. It is a community gathering space. It is Veterans Plaza, where we have Pride in the Plaza. It is Rockville, where we fly the Pride flag in June. So I was delighted to be able to highlight this effort for planning professionals and our colleagues. And that really concludes my presentation. Again, we're going to have the booth out there this Sunday. If y'all are looking for something to do, it's going to be a really, really wonderful event. We're really looking forward to participating and then bringing more nominations to you later this year. So thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
Anything else? If not, I declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you. Better hurry up, because if you're like me, you have 3 hours on the meter and it's running out.